Hello and welcome to the channel. We are the Hologrumps. I am Colm.
And I'm Liam.
And we're here today to talk to you, finally, about Star Trek Picard, Episode 1, Remembrance.
Now, this episode was directed by Hanel M. Culpepper. And before we start, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you like what you see here, because we are going to be reviewing every single episode of Star Trek Picard the night it airs. Before we begin, for anyone out there who hasn't seen this episode, there will be spoilers. We are mostly going to be doing spoiler reviews, so make sure you've seen the episode. So, this episode opens with Picard having a dream about the Enterprise D, and he's playing poker with Lieutenant Commander Data. Now, in this episode, we get to see the ship aesthetic, and the Enterprise D looks great. Slightly altered to fit the current CGI, but amazing.
We're eventually introduced to Daj and her alien boyfriend. Daj has been accepted as a fellow in artificial intelligence and quantum consciousness at the Daystrom Institute of Robotics. It is cool to see aliens in this, of course. We always like to see new species. But this character is ultimately wasted because they're interrupted by Romulans who beam in and try to kill her.
They eventually kill her boyfriend.
Oh
no! The Romulans ask her, "Where are the rest of you?" Now, this could possibly hint at there being more of her. A lot more of her. We don't know yet. And then we'll continue on where we get to see Daj having a dream or a vision about Admiral Picard in his suit, possibly seeing the future.
The credits begin, and we see 19 producers. I'd like to point out, 19 people can never agree on one thing. How could you ever imagine getting 19 people to agree on one script? Compare this to a random episode of The Next Generation, for example, Captain's Holiday, which was season 3.
Episode 19.
Yeah. They had two producers, Gene Roddenberry and Peter Lortzen.
You can imagine the phrase, too many cook supplies for this. Then we move on past the credits where we meet Picard's living companions, two Romulans from the comics, the Countdown comics, if anyone has read them, Loris and Zhaban. Now, there's a nice reference here to home cooking in the Picard residence. From the episode Family in Season 4, where Picard stays with his brother, his nephew, and his sister-in-law. Picard and his brother have this argument at the dinner table where he states that it was nice that they've kept home cooking in the family, and his father never wanted to get a replicator, and they have this argument about that. But then, of course, Picard replicates his tea, so let's just forget about that. But the home cooking was nice. Picard then has an interview on the anniversary of the supernova which destroyed Romulus. We learn that 92,000 people died in the Mars attacks, and that Mars is still on fire to this day. The interviewer turns hostile on live TV and asks Picard why he quit Starfleet, to which he states, "It wasn't the Starfleet that I knew," or something along them lines, and ends the interview. They show a picture during this interview of Worf and the Klingons. Could this be a deliberate apology? Or
They show a load of pictures from Picard's career, and they're all really just screen grabs, basically, from random episodes and random stills that they did. It's just quite bizarre. But the apology to the Klingons, I don't know. I don't think we'll see any Klingons in this.
But they want to sweep the Discovery Klingons under the rug.
However, it is a nice callback during the interview to Picard's legacy of loving archaeology and loving all things to do with history, because they do mention pyramids and he does correct her on that. Not necessarily the right analogy using Dunkirk, but we'll get to that later.
And the problem I had as well with this was, why was Picard's interviewer not vetted? Because obviously Zhaban says she was, but how could they have possibly picked such a hostile interviewer? And there doesn't seem to be any repercussion for Zhaban for not correctly vetting her. So maybe we'll see that later on.
So Daj arrives at the vineyard, and she's actually doing her very best Anakin Skywalker impression. Picard calms her down, invites her to stay the night. It was very much like episode 2. Daj killed all the sand people. You know, they have tea in his courtyard where Picard queries her about her necklace. She hands it to Picard and somehow forgets to take it back.
And the problem I had with the necklace here was the fact that she didn't have a real backstory set up for it. I mean, we saw the other character at the end. We won't go into that yet. But she had a story set up for where that necklace was. All Daj had was, it was given to me by my father, or made by my father. And then, of course, if it's so important to her that she wears it all the time, how could she just forget it right after she gives it to Jean-Luc?
I bet money her father is the guy that's mentioned later on in the episode now.
So then Picard has another dream of Data painting. He wakes up in the kitchen to discover that the painting Data was doing was in fact the sister painting Picard has over his fireplace. Now, the nice thing about this was we get to see that CBS finally fixed Data's hairline. If we look at the old trailers, it was very round shaped, but he actually has a proper hairline now, so good job. Upon learning Dahj left in the early hours of the morning, Picard goes to Starfleet Archive Museum to access his personal belongings. He discovers the sister portrait that Data was painting is in fact one that he made of Dahj 30 years previous. Now this was a nice scene in the Starfleet Archive Museum because they had the TNG era computers, which was a really nice progression to see them in here, which they needed in stuff like Discovery. But the problem I had was, why did Picard just have this painting sitting in storage for the last 30 years if Data was so important to him?
Me and Liam kind of disagree on this one. I just argue he didn't want to have the same painting twice in his house, so he kept one of them in storage.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like they belong together. One shows one view, obviously the back of the woman. The other, maybe the more important one, shows the woman's face, which was the one he opted to keep in storage. And surely he can access that picture from his home. Why does he have to go all the way into storage? Because the hologram he speaks to in the archive has all the information for him and knows what the picture is. So why couldn't he just access that from his home? Why was it so secret? Why did it have to be kept there?
Maybe it's a privacy thing that they can't access it unless you're in the room with it. I don't know.
Yeah,
to stop other people from accessing your private data inside rooms. No pun intended.
Yeah. So then we had the clothing.
Oh, I love the clothing. It was good uniforms, good computer aesthetics. The computer really reminded me of the Next Generation. That was until they got the box opening ceremony of the folding box with little tiny triangles, which was a little bit bizarre. But,
yeah, maybe that was the reason for the Ask Not Short Trek to show that technology in the first place.
It exists, I suppose.
Yeah. And then from here, the scene cuts to France, where Dahj calls her fake mother. Her mother tells her to seek out Picard and new life and new civilization. Dahj hacks Starfleet and locates Picard. Outside the museum, Picard encounters Dahj. He tells her who she is.
Now, the acting from Dahj was very forced compared to Picard, but that's kind of to be expected. It kind of feels like the lack of Next Generation characters is also a mistake. The chemistry between Picard and Data was obviously palpable. Not so much with the new cast.
Well, that's always going to be an issue when you start off a new show, because you have stalwart members of the cast like Patrick Stewart, Brent Spiner, Jonathan Frakes, Miranda Sirtis, who we haven't seen it yet, of course. But there's going to be a slight dissonance between how them characters interact with each other and the new characters, because they haven't established their chemistry yet. It could develop as it goes on, so this isn't necessarily a criticism, just an observation.
Now, the Romulans... Oh no, they track Dahj down again. Picard and Dahj escape to the roof, but the Romulans intercept and eliminate Dahj. She's dead. Which is actually quite surprising. To be honest, I was quite surprised that actually did happen.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, the choreography was quite good. It was very fluid. Camera didn't jump too much. It did feel a little bit, as you said, like a superhero movie.
Now, the problem that we both had with this scene was when Picard and Dahj were having their conversation about who she is. Dahj had absolutely no idea who Data was. She says, an android, like one of them destruction machines. But the big problem here is, at the very start of the episode, Dahj says she has been accepted as a fellow researcher in the Daystrom Institute for Robotics. And Data, as we know from this episode, is the model that they're basing everything around, or rather the ideal model that they're basing everything around. He's the most famous cybernetic life form in all of Starfleet, and she doesn't even know who he is. How could this happen?
But she's supposed to be this super bio-android that we discover at the start of the episode, and she doesn't realize who Commander Data is. B'Elanna Torres,
the Maquis member on Voyager,
knew who Commander Data was. It's ridiculous.
But well, that's just part of the plot. Part of the plot. So then, after the explosion, Picard awakes in his vineyard and realizes it is time for him to get out and get to the bottom of things. Picard heads to the Daystrom Institute in Okinawa and meets with Dr. Agnes Jurati. They then look at the remains of B4, and Picard shows Jurati Dahj's necklace. She then informs him of the work of researcher Bruce Maddox, who believed he could recreate Data's AI with a single cell of data. Dr. Jurati tells Picard that Dahj has a sister.
And again, this is the point I'd like to make. I have a sneaking suspicion that this Bruce Maddox is the father of Dahj, obviously.
Yeah, maybe she's slightly based on his appearance.
Who knows?
We don't know. We don't know yet.
Anyway, we end up meeting Narek and Soji. Now, Soji is actually
Dahj.
Well, her sister.
Yeah.
Twin. Identical sister. And of course, Soji knows who Dahj is, but Dahj never made mention of Soji.
Well, we're not sure if Soji knows who Dahj is. Soji just has a backstory to explain what her necklace is.
And perhaps the most bizarre thing about this ending, because we're getting to the end here, is the fact that the Romulans are on a cube, a Romulan Borg cube, a Romulan cube. But all the ships that we see are Romulan ships. They're very reminiscent of Nemesis. They're like the Valdor and the Scimitar ships.
Of course, as well as this, we get introduced to Narek, who looks oddly like STD Spock. So maybe we've reached max creativity. Who knows? Okay, and that brings us on to the end of the episode. Colin, what are your thoughts? Did you enjoy it?
I have one thought. And only one thought. As I watched this episode, my one thought was this. There are too many ads. This is meant to be a streaming service, and there's ads every 15 minutes.
Yeah, and we are aware that we've paid for the commercial option for the streaming service because it's only $6 a month. But that's not competitive when you compare it to things like Amazon Prime and Netflix. I mean, is this just the norm?
I audibly screamed during the second load of ads because they came right after the action sequence where Picard blows up and you're like, oh my god, is Picard dead? And then there's this ad break and you're like...
In today's day and age, it really breaks the narrative when you... Like, it was okay with daytime television for Star Trek The Next Generation.
And let's not forget, that was 3 minutes of ads, so you were actually given plenty of time.
Yeah.
And they paced their episodes so that it would end at an interesting moment to break the story up so you could go get a cup of tea. This ended on a cliffhanger as if it was the end of an episode for an ad about donuts.
Just stuff that wasn't even relevant. We got an ad for Star Trek Discovery in there as well. But we digress.
Certified fresh.
So, our thoughts moving forward. There is probably room to improve in maybe some of the CGI aspects, like we had the strange-looking blood from our alien friend at the start when he got run through with a Romulan dagger.
Could have been alien blood, in fairness, but, it did look just like glass blood. To be honest, Picard is a mere passenger in the story so far, but it is set up so Dahj is the major force, moving the story forward, pushing Picard back out into the final frontier.
And moving forward, obviously Picard is going to take a much more dominant role in the show, but just, we hope anyway. And what about the story column? Did it make sense to you? How was it paced?
Oh, I thought it was actually excellently paced. It gave us very much a story that was peaks and valleys, as I always like to say. It had its action moments, its moments of intensity, and its moments of relaxation. It wasn't all talk, and it wasn't all action. So it had a very good pacing. We weren't thrown loads of information either at the beginning or the end. It was all given to us piecemeal.
And luckily, the people that made the show were very well aware that it's going to be one episode per week. So they weren't giving us loads of information and loads of exposition at the start and not have any of it pay off in the first episode. Because we want some of that per episode. We want some payoff in each episode. Not everything, but some. And they did give us enough. I was very happy with this as a first episode. Character-driven aspect of the show was brilliant because obviously it's Star Trek Picard. So the situations have to revolve around him in a sense that they could only progress if he is there. If it was another character, it mightn't happen.
Compared to STD, the episode was a huge step in the right direction for Star Trek.
Yeah.
But there is definitely room for improvement. There are plenty of interesting plot threads to speculate about, to develop. And there are some unfortunate holes, as we've stated, such as the necklace.
Yeah. And this was a tiny taste of what Star Trek used to be. And it's certainly trying to attract new audiences with its high-octane action. The political message of the episode was a little heavy-handed. It comments on isolationism as a thing to be worried about, a failure of Starfleet/Britain, but it worked within the universe. So they used the androids and painted back to measure of a man, which was really nice.
It did work. It absolutely did. The thing that it didn't, okay, from my personal opinion, didn't really work was the referencing of Dunkirk. I mean, it's a nice homage to the past. Misses the mark slightly. The Romulans at the time, they were the enemy. The Dunkirk equivalent would have been the British rescuing the Germans from Germany, which would have been a bit bizarre. Now, obviously, Starfleet is all about, or at the time it was all about including people, and they would have dropped everything to rescue the Romulans. But it was a bit of an odd analogy. I suppose you can see where Picard was trying to come from in this united front, saving everyone's lives. All lives matter to Picard.
To sum it up, the episode worked. It was better than our expectations, though STD left them quite low. If the entire run was to stay at this level, we'd be pleasantly surprised. And finally, Colin, did Picard seem like Picard to you, the character? Was it a natural progression?
Was it Patrick Stewart, or was it Jean-Luc Picard?
Or was it Jake Picard?
Or Jacques Picard? It was definitely Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah.
I was, the second he came on, and even in the dream sequence, I was hooked. I was like, there's Jean-Luc Picard finally back. I'm going to watch any scene he's in and I'm going to just smile at him. Because he's great. Even the bad acting from other actors, I'll just keep smiling because he's absolutely great.
And this was a thing that had us very worried going into it. Would it be a case just like Luke Skywalker? And no, it wasn't. So
would Picard have compromised his ideals? But no, in a strange twist of fate, it was Starfleet that compromised their ideals, and Picard, being the moral center of the universe, walked away from Starfleet.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that about wraps us up. So, if you liked what you see here, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button because we will be covering every episode of Star Trek Picard.
As soon as it airs.
Yep. For the Hologrumps, I've been Liam.
And I'm Colum.
Take care.